let's just start with the top. Obviously, there's one game that stands above the rest for week 2. Texas goes to Tuscaloosa and beats Alabama 34-24. Massive win for their program. You can start this with Texas, Alabama. There's a lot to talk about. Well, start with Texas. They're the winners. What are your thoughts about them in particular?
How physical they were up front.
Yeah.
I think that was really surprising to me. We knew they had good receivers. We knew the quarterback play was good. We knew they had athletes and in defense, but we thought maybe more like not up front. We didn't think that they were going to beat Alabama up front, and they did. And you could argue on both sides of the ball. They ran the ball late, and they got after the offensive line, Alabama's offensive line. And Jalen, I mean, Milroe was definitely looking he was all over the place. His internal clock was way off, and you could tell it. That was very obvious. Texas was physical, and I think that was the biggest surprise for me.
Yeah, I mean, I knew going to that game they had the advantage at quarterback and receiver, but I didn't know if they'd have it anywhere else. Right. And yeah, I mean, you could argue they were better up front. The defensive front, I think they did have the advantage of being able to just kind of stack the box because they weren't real scared of what might happen when you do that.
Sure. Right.
But yeah, I mean, they definitely, that was not the same Texas we've been seeing for 15 years or close to that now. Definitely looked different. Their offensive line, I thought, played pretty well. Bama has a really good defense, and I didn't come away, even though they allowed 34 points, but I did not come away from this game thinking that Bama's defense was anything other than a top 5 unit in the country. I actually do think they are a top 5 defense in the country. But Texas, really great offense when given chances over and over and over again. Eventually, they're going to score against anybody. And I was really impressed by Texas. Quinn Ewers hadn't thrown a touchdown pass over 30 yards yet in his entire career, and he had several in this game. They were as advertised. We can talk more about them later, but let's jump into Alabama. What are your thoughts on Bama?
This was surprising, right? So all offseason we were hearing that we're going to get back to our roots. We're going to get back to what made us great. We're going to try to run the ball, be real physical, control the time of possession. We're going to roll over you, kind of like how we used to, and our defense is going to play really solid. We're not going to give the ball away, and we are going to suffocate you. That's kind of what they told. They said that. We didn't make that up. That's not people making anything up. That's what they told us all off season. And to see, and there were some of us that had reservations that can you just go get that back? Is that something that you can just go find magically in an off season? Because that's not what they were the last number of years, right? So we were a little skeptical, but they said that they were, and they're Alabama. They have the greatest coach of all time and a fantastic roster. And you're like, well, if anyone could do that, it would be these guys. And I think we found that it's hard to do, especially now. Now, the one thing I do want to say, Alabama will be a different team in November than they are right now. Mm-hmm. It is okay to give them some time to get there. Give it time to develop. I think Alabama will be better in November than they are right now. They have a lot of young kids playing. We'll just say that, especially on the offensive line, even in the secondary. They've got some youngsters out there. But it was shocking to see them not be as physical. That is both of those things are true for me. I'm going to give them some time, and I'm also going to be surprised that they were not more prepared. Texas won in all 3 phases. Texas was the better football team. You play this game 10 times, Texas probably wins 7. On the road, in Tuscaloosa, I was really impressed with Texas. What does it mean for Bama? I guess that's kind of the question that everyone's asking, and I don't have a great answer for that. I kind of want to wait and see, I guess. It's a team that Alabama, they're a team that wasn't great last year, in my estimation. They were good, but they could have lost more than just the 2 games it's just the 2 games that they lost last year. They could have easily lost more. And I don't know. I'm just hesitant. I'm being hesitant just to throw them under the bus yet.
Yeah, they got beat by a legitimately really good team, I think, is what happened. And
right.
It's even kind of weird. One of my main questions about Alabama was the receivers. And they didn't light the world on fire, but I didn't think the receivers were that bad.
Right.
I was a little shocked at how obviously the quarterback, Jalen Milroe, and even the offensive line, like I thought those two things had a chance to be a strength of the team. Not maybe not Milroe being like the engine that makes the whole team go, but like I thought he could be actually a strength of the team. I thought the offensive line would clearly be a strength of the team. Boy, those two units did not live up to expectations for me. We talked a lot. We heard a lot about Alabama's tackles both being 360.
Yeah.
I wonder if maybe they wouldn't be better off, maybe being 330 instead. Like some of the speed rushers and like some of that, it just didn't seem like they were able to handle all of that. And Milroe, he could not figure out. To me, it looked like first of all, he's a great runner. He showed that several times. And I think some people are going to say he's just not a very accurate passer. I don't even know if that's it. I just think he doesn't know what he's looking at a lot of the time. It seemed like he didn't know how to read defenses. He didn't know where to take advantage of the coverage. Didn't know what he was looking at pre-snap. And Texas was able to confuse him. They had some easy interceptions just because, like he was throwing in places where he never should have been throwing it.
Right.
Is that something that can be fixed? And do you feel like they should have gone somewhere else in the game?
I think if Saban felt another guy would give them a better shot, then he would have put that guy in. Because I mean, there was a great screenshot that you see of Milroe on the phone with Tommy Rees. I'm sure you probably saw this, and Tommy Rees just has his head in his hands at that point, like this is just disaster. Like, and it felt that way. Watching the play of the quarterback, you could tell how twitchy Milroe was. And as soon as there was any pressure in his face at all, his eyes came down and there was no chance he was going to throw the ball. He actively did not want to throw the ball. He was terrified of throwing the ball, is what it looked like. Now, he had some great throws, by the way. Like, let's not just say that it was an awful performance by him. That long ball to Jermaine Burton that actually gave Alabama the lead in the third quarter was a great ball. But overall, he wasn't consistent enough. Not consistent enough to beat Texas. Quinn Ewers looked legitimately really good. I think both of those things are true. Alabama was a little bit disappointing. Texas was way better than what I expected. I think we both picked Texas to win the Big 12. It's a pick that looks better by the day. That's a playoff team. That feels like a playoff team. If you can push around Alabama, you can push around almost anyone, maybe except for Georgia, Michigan, maybe. You belong in the top 4 conversation for sure. That was their big game. That was Texas's big game. The schedule only gets easier for them. I was really impressed. I thought they came with a really good offensive game plan. They were disruptive on defense. They had 5 sacks, 9 tackles for loss. I mean, significant, man. Like, that's significant. I don't know what else to say. Like, I don't have much else to add to that. It was an extremely impressive performance by Texas.
It feels like it's become obviously it's only week 2. We only saw 2 full weeks of this, but it doesn't feel like there is a really complete dominant team out there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Georgia is still obviously the odds-on favorite, but you don't feel like I don't feel like Georgia is the same team that they've been the last 2 years. They might still be the best team in the country. They might still win the national title. And my point of saying that is it's all out there for Texas. Like, there is a world where they could win the national title this year. Like, that is actually feasible. I don't know if I would have said that necessarily until we saw this, but now that we saw this happen, it's all out there for them. I wouldn't be shocked at all if they make the playoff.
The amount of teams that go on the road to Tuscaloosa and win it's just a very, very small list. And almost always that team, after doing that, they've used that win just to slingshot them into a lot of momentum going down the rest of the year. You think of 19 LSU, a team that, obviously a historic team that went in there and did that. The Johnny Manziel team, way back in the day. It takes a Heisman winner, it feels like, to do this, or in a really impressive performance or a really complete team. It's hard to beat Bama in Tuscaloosa. I do. I think they ride this momentum. I think this will, I mean, if you're a Texas fan, you have to just be cloud nine, like just ecstatic. This is everything that they want. Texas is back. Like Texas, you could, yeah, that's a term that's used a lot. They're in the conversation for the playoff. Like they are right there. Their name will be mentioned. They have the most impressive win of anybody so far this year. They're there and they deserve to be there. That's a really good football team.
Are your kids prepared for a Texas Florida State playoff game? Because it might happen.
That would be wow, dude. That would be fantastic. A playoff where Georgia, Florida State, Texas, Michigan. Like you would talk about some ratings, like that would be intrigue. That would be awesome right there. That would be some fantastic. Maybe it's just the brands and part of it's just, Florida State and Texas getting back and Michigan, being back in the playoff again. That it's not the Bama Clemson. Like we can talk about Clemson a bit if we want to, but I think we talked about them more last week. It kind of feels like a changing of the guard a little bit. It's kind of what that felt like with Bama, Clemson, Ohio State, maybe not as impressive. And some of these other teams stepping up and taking that role.
Right, exactly. Real quick, before we move on to other games, am I a bad person as a Notre Dame fan if I kind of chuckled when I see Tommy Rees struggling with quarterback play and Notre Dame, after he leaves, unable to score fewer than 40 points in a game?
Sure. Yes. No, that you're fine. I have no problem with you doing that. By the way, I'm not completely against the offensive game plan from Bama was not terrible. Like, sure, there's only so much you're going to be able to do as an offensive play caller when you can't block them. Like there's not a whole lot else to do. And you're right. Like, no doubt the Notre Dame offense has taken off. There was a play I thought specifically where Milroe, he missed. There was a wheel route to the running back out of the backfield. McClellan he was on the right side. It's a touchdown if you hit him. Like it was a walk in, I don't know, 50-yarder maybe. It was a touchdown if you hit him. He had a clean pocket. And he just missed him. He just didn't hit him. And like that's all you can do as a play caller is dial that up and give your guy a chance, get a good matchup. And at some point your guys have to go execute. So I wasn't a huge fan of the Tommy Rees hire either for Alabama. I didn't feel like this one was completely his fault. Like sure. I don't know. Like I'm willing to give him a little bit of slack. I kind of go back to plays, like that wheel route that they need to hit. As like what else do you want the guy to do? Like he can't go complete the pass himself. So yeah, I don't know. That's kind of where I left that one, I guess.
Is Ty Simpson just bad? Like he was kind of known as the passer in this battle. And man, Bama could have used a passer in this game.
Well, I think we'll find out. A lot's going to be, we're going to find out a lot in the next couple of weeks, like with where they go, really quarterback, play calling, everything. Where do they go now? Because do they double down and try to just continue running the ball and maybe get Milroe just a little bit more comfortable? Milroe can't make more than one read. I mean, that's obvious. He has one read in him. Yeah. It's predetermined, absolutely pre-snap. There's no chance that he makes a second read. So yeah, I don't know. Like we'll have to see what they want to do. Do they just go all in on that and just like, we're going to try to be more physical and be better? And maybe that'll work, or do we try to go back to what we know and try to sling the ball around a lot like we did with Bryce Young and Mac Jones? Maybe they do. It's going to be really interesting watching this Bama team going forward.
I think with Milroe, they can win 10, 11 games this year. Like I think there's that chance when you run into Georgia or somebody like that. Like obviously Texas is maybe not on Georgia's level, but kind of in that top tier of college football.
Yeah.
That's not going to be enough. That's not going to get it done. And yeah, I mean, I don't know this for a fact, but it seemed like the three best quarterbacks. You could argue the three best quarterbacks in that game all were wearing burnt orange. Two of them on the sideline.
Yeah, I wasn't going to go there. I mean, Alabama could have used Arch Manning. I feel like Arch Manning would have started that game for Bama. Like we don't even know much about him, but yeah, it did feel like they could have used a spark. I don't know. Let's give it just a little bit of time. Let's just let it soak a little bit.
All right, let's move on. Friday night, Kansas beat Illinois 34-23. Kansas's offense remains awesome. Saturday, Wake Forest beat Vanderbilt 36-20. I might touch up on that one later when we talk about our locks. Notre Dame beat NC State 45-24.
Yeah. Did
you get any eyeballs in this one?
I watched it a bit. The weather delay really sucked. It was one of my locks of the week. It just, that line felt low. Notre Dame's offense is really impressive. I know it was a close game until the fourth quarter, and they kind of popped off and scored a lot of points. But the balance, I think, is striking. How they can run. They have explosive running plays too. It's not just like we're going to air the ball out with Hartman. They're running better. And Hartman's been really good. Like there's just no other way to say it. He's been really, really good. That balance is going to be fun. Notre Dame and Ohio State it's just right around the corner, man. That's all I can think about. Like we have some really, really good games coming up.
Yeah, actually I kind of cautiously feel better about Notre Dame coming out of that game, even though I felt like they kind of played their B- game. And maybe that's why I feel better, because they were a 1 touchdown favorite. They played their B- game and they won that game by 3 touchdowns. They were up by 4. NC State scored with 2 minutes left to make it look closer even than it was. Balance on offense. Their defense played well. Obviously, for the first time this year, they gave up a touchdown.
Right.
But yeah, I was impressed. They started slow. NC State, known for their defense, they got a really good defensive coordinator, and they got 3 and outs. Notre Dame's first 2 possessions, it was slow going, but for the third game in a row, Notre Dame has called timeouts at the end of the first half, gotten the ball back with less than 2 minutes to go, and going down and scored a touchdown. Mm-hmm. When they go on a 2-minute offense, it's just automatic. Hartman has shown a real good ability to do that. Holden Stays, the tight end, he kind of broke out this game. 2 touchdowns, over 100 yards. He's like their second tight end. So there's no like outstanding weapons on this Notre Dame offense, but there's just a lot of really good players. And it's a unique thing from what we've seen. But yeah, we'll talk a lot more about them coming up. Obviously, that big game coming up in 2 weeks against Ohio State. By the way, Ohio State's still a 7.5-point favorite in that game. So,
yes, sir.
Yeah. Utah beat Baylor 20-13. Utah kind of just, I don't know. It took them 3 quarters to wake the car up somehow. Like, I don't know what happened in this game other than they just couldn't figure anything out offensively. Finally figured out how to take the lead, and Baylor still had a chance to tie it at the end of the game. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts?
Trap game, I guess. I think that's kind of where I think Utah's a good team. Can we get an update on when Cam Rising's coming back? Like, do we have any clue there? I mean, is he just out? Like, I haven't heard much. And I know that like that's an offense that needed a spark for a lot of that game. So Baylor should have won that football game. I mean, that's just the truth of it. Baylor was the better football team for most of that game. They led almost all game. A late interception, kind of a bad pick that they throw, and ends up costing them. I am impressed with Utah though. Like that's a game that, I mean, that was Baylor's best effort. Like you took Baylor's best effort, still won. Yeah. Utah had put a ton of effort into the Florida game week 1, needing that revenge, right? And needing a big non-conference win, and they go get it, and then you have to go to Baylor. I just think it's a tough spot. Vegas was onto it. They had the point spread really low. They knew,
to my detriment at least.
Yeah. Right. They knew about that one. So I think just credit to Utah. Good for them for pulling it out. Baylor, that's tough. That's a tough loss. That's not a great look for Dave Aranda. I will say that.
Right. Colorado beat Nebraska 36-14. This was one that I was not able to get a lot of eyes on. What were your thoughts in this game?
I mean, Nebraska's offense is really bad. I'm not really, I don't really know. There's not much I'm going to take from that. Like, Colorado's impressive. They're better than we thought they were going to be. I'm also not going to put just a whole lot into them beating Nebraska, I don't think. Like,
they're going to a bowl game this year, though.
Colorado's a good team. Colorado's a good football team. They're a top 25 football team right now. And I don't know. I think that my perspective already adjusted week 1 to like, okay, they're legitimate. And it hasn't changed. The Nebraska win doesn't really change that. They're still legitimate. So let's just see them keep happening. They have a couple of big games coming up against USC and Oregon here shortly. So we'll see. Like that's the good thing. They're playing in the Pac-12, and dude, that's a loaded conference right now. There's a lot of good football teams in that conference, 8 of whom are ranked this week in the AP poll. The best conference out there right now. I mean, you're going to have a tough time arguing with me if I say that they are. So no, hey, it's all out there for Colorado. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a really fun season there in Boulder.
Absolutely. All right. Purdue beat Virginia Tech 24-17. First win under the new regime there. Miami beat Texas A&M 48-33. Juan going away. This was a tight game for most of it, and then the fourth quarter, like Miami their offense couldn't be stopped anymore. Tyler Van Dyke was great. A&M, I heard somebody else say it, their DBs looked like they weren't coached, which we had questions about that defensive coordinator hire a year ago, and clearly this is not Mike Elko's defense at Texas A&M.
What do you say? Like, what do you even have? You gave up almost 50 points to Miami. Like 48. Miami couldn't score against anybody last year. Like, they didn't have a good offense. Tyler Van Dyke was really, really good for Miami, 5 touchdowns. Like, I don't have much to say. A&M, we thought offense was the problem. Offense was not their issue here. They put up enough points to win. Connor Wigman is a good quarterback. Yeah. Like, he had a good week again. Like, his first 2 weeks, he's been above average, like definitely living up to the 5-star billing. Evan Stewart's a ball player at receiver. Really, really good. Mm-hmm. You did not think the defense was going to implode like that. You did not have any evidence that the defense was just going to fall apart. So I don't have much. I don't have much out there. I don't have much to say. I really don't. I mean, poor coaching, I guess you could say. Yeah, it's not, you're right. It's definitely not the Mike Elko defense of 2 years ago. So yeah, I don't have much else. Did you watch it at all? Is this a game you saw?
Yeah, I watched most of it. But yeah, DJ Durkin, I should have mentioned him, the defensive coordinator. The ingredients are there. Like, they have the talent. And we've talked about this. This is a common thing in football. Jimmys and Joes on defense and X's and O's on offense. Like, they got Jimmys and Joes on that defense, and they did not look like they were, functional. Evan Stewart had one big drop I saw. Like, that would have been nice to have. But yeah, like this, it just feels like the program is just rotten. Like it, and that's probably a Jimbo Fisher thing. Like,
yeah.
What are the odds Mike Elko comes back and we see him on the sidelines next year at Texas A&M?
No, the buyout's too big. The buyout is too big. There's no chance, dude. They don't have that much money. It's one thing to be rich. It's another thing to be that rich. Like, his buyout is so, like, it's not only is it bigger than any other coach, it's so much bigger than any other coach. Like, it will be by far the largest buyout we've ever seen. Like, ever. Not by a, I don't even have much. He has to stay there. He has to stay there. There's no way really to get rid of him. In a weird way, I'm kind of still in on Texas A&M. Like, I don't think the program's rotten. I think the defense has enough talent. I don't like the defensive coordinator. But I think they'll be fine. Like, I really do. I think A&M's going to win some football games. They've got a good offense. The offense does look at least decent. Petrino has made a difference. Petrino has definitely improved that offense. So yeah, we'll just leave it there. They're 1-1 going into SEC play. I think A&M's they're gonna be some trouble for some people out in the SEC West.
Yeah, you're right. The buyout is still over $60 million after this year. So
right. Yeah.
Probably not going to happen unless they get a for-cause situation, which we might talk about that later.
I will say, if there was ever a time to, we're not going to say, no, I'm not even going to get into that. Just leave that one alone. But that stuff definitely does happen. Like, if you want to, send some prostitutes over to his house or something, and then take some photos and get him fired. It's kind of what's happening in Michigan State right now. So yeah, we'll just leave that one alone. I'm done. Sorry. Apologies.
Oh my. All right. Next, we'll talk about Ole Miss. They beat Tulane 37-20. Was not actually that big of a spread. Like, this was a tight game, and this is without Michael Pratt playing for Tulane. I was really impressed by them anyway. Like, they had a chance here. Ole Miss had a pick six late while Tulane was trying to drive. Right. So yeah, I guess props to Ole Miss here. I was equally impressed by Tulane and sticking in there, even though we know Michael Pratt is a baller and so
Right.
having to play without him. Is there anything to take away from this game for you?
I think there were two good teams. I think both
Sure.
of these teams are solid. And yeah, you're right. It is disappointing that Pratt wasn't playing. I mean, he's one of the best quarterbacks, I mean, in all of college football, honestly. Like he's a fantastic talent. But Tulane's still really good. Like I was impressed by how solid they were. So Ole Miss, yeah, as I think the same thing. Jackson Dart is the guy for them. I don't think there's any question. They didn't run the ball for a whole lot of yards in this game. They had under 100 rushing yards and beat still what was a really, really good Tulane team. So, yeah, no, I think it was two good football teams.
Is Jackson Dart the best quarterback in the SEC?
No, that belongs to KJ Jefferson, and we will not tolerate any of that slander around here right now. I will say Jackson Dart has improved his stock, and he has jumped over a couple of guys after the first 2 weeks. But no, it's KJ first. KJ at Arkansas is the best quarterback. Jackson Dart's up there, though. I think he's climbing. And by the way, an Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin coached quarterback, playing well, like that shouldn't be surprising to us. It should not. So yeah, I think he will have a good year. I think that we should expect him to have a good year.
Does your conference have a quarterback problem if KJ Jefferson is the best quarterback in your conference?
Are we getting into some SEC hate now? Is that where we're going?
I'm just asking the question. It's still easily
that's where you seem to be going with it. That's where you seem to be going.
It's still easily the most talented conference.
Mm-hmm.
You were saying earlier that like the Pac-12 might be the best conference this year. They got eight ranked teams.
Yeah.
I think if you gave the SEC the Pac-12's quarterbacks, they'd have maybe 8 of the top 10. Like you could argue that's the weakness for the majority of the SEC's teams, which is not normal in recent years. Like we've seen some really good quarterback years in the SEC. To me, it just feels like it's a down year for the quarterback in the SEC.
I think it's a down year for the quarterback across the country, with the exception of the Pac-12. Like I don't think really none of the ACC quarterbacks have looked fantastic outside of Jordan Travis. The Big Ten quarterbacks you'd like to point out, I guess McCarthy's been okay, but McNamara has not been fantastic, and the Ohio State situation's not been fantastic. We're still waiting on Drew Allar. I mean, we think he's good. We lost Stroud, Richardson, we lost Bryce Young, we lost Hendon Hooker to the NFL draft, and 3 of those 4 guys were SEC quarterbacks. There's going to be a drop off, especially early in the year. Like it's going to take a little bit of time. I do stand by what I said earlier. The Pac-12 is the best conference out there right now, top to bottom. I think if you would play every conference against each other and my 1 plays your 1, my 2 plays your 2, I think the Pac-12 wins that challenge against almost every other conference. I think they win that challenge against every other conference, I guess I should say. They're the deepest conference right now. The SEC, it's not been a great start for my guys. It hasn't been. That's our conference. We put a lot of stock into winning non-conference games, and we win a whole bunch of them. I say we. I'm kind of getting into that group think that everyone hates so much. We do. We win our non-conference games, and we normally handle you, especially when you get into the playoff or bowls. We'll pummel you. We really will. Outside of Georgia this year, no one else is going to do it. No one else is doing it so far, and there's not a lot of big non-conference matchups left for the SEC. There's a few at the end of the year where Florida plays Florida State and South Carolina will play Clemson. But I mean, you needed Alabama to beat Texas, and you needed LSU to beat Florida State, and South Carolina to beat North Carolina, and you lost all 3 of those by double digits, all 3 of them. So yeah, it's not a good look for the SEC to start. There's no question that it's been a lackluster start from them. Now, I do think that dancing on their grave is premature. It is premature right now. They have the most talent. They will continue to have the most talent. Enjoy it. Just don't say too much about it and make us all mad, or then we'll come back and get revenge. So just take your wins and move on.
Yeah. Let the record show I'm not dancing on the SEC's grave. I just think their quarterbacks are a little iffy this year.
Okay.
Fair enough. Right. Iowa beats Iowa State 20-13 in. Yeah, I get that. To me, sounds like that's the ideal score for that rivalry. What are your thoughts?
I mean, we didn't get to 25. We didn't get to 25 points, and we even had a defensive touchdown. I just leave it at that. Yeah.
Yep. Oregon beats Texas Tech 38-30. tight game. They almost blew that. We both had Oregon as one of our locks of the week.
Yes, sir.
They clinched that with a pick six as Texas Tech was trying to drive to win the game in the last minute. Texas Tech is just going to be a weird team this year, I think. Like, they were kind of a sleeper in the Big 12. They were everybody's sleeper. Now they're 0-2. This part of the 0-2 is not nearly as bad as last week, obviously, but it does make me question Oregon just a little bit. Like, I think I was coming around to maybe them being the Pac-12 favorite for me. I'm probably back to where I was preseason, where I think USC is probably the Pac-12 favorite, but Oregon still has a shot, obviously.
Yeah, that game's in Oregon, though. Like, USC has to go to Oregon this year to play them. I think that will be difficult. I think this was also a trap game, kind of like what Utah did going to Baylor. You're just lucky. You just want to win and you just want to go home. Yeah, it's simple as that.
Yeah. All right. UCF beats Boise State 18-16. Big group of 5 matchup there. Close game, by the way. Came down to field goal at the end. Washington State upsets Wisconsin on the road, 31-22. Big win for their program. Jake Dickert was kind of breaking up after the game. Like, we belong in a Power 5. Those guys work hard. I hope Washington State and Oregon State end up like in the top 15 at the end of the season. Like, Washington State, I think, is pretty solid.
Is this like do they just, how did they not get accepted like that? How did Washington State and Oregon State just get left in the cold? Is
I would have thought the Big 12 would love to have them.
Right.
Like, those are solid programs.
Right. No, I know. Absolutely. They're both going to have really good years, I think. I mean, they're both off to good starts, at least. Yeah,
absolutely. Mississippi State beats Arizona 31-24 in overtime. Tight game. I was not able to catch most of this, but everything I hear is that it was a good game. USC beats Stanford 56-10, and that might not have been that close. Just kind of the route was on just from the snap. At halftime, it was over. USC looks like an absolute tank, and Stanford looks pretty bad. From week 1, they might have looked better than people thought, but week 2, clearly they're not on USC's level or anywhere close. Another late night game, and I heard some of the 24/7 guys refer to this as the culture war. Auburn beats Cal 14-10. I think that's a great name. We need to have that game play more often and call it the culture war. Probably couldn't have two more different universities and cultures between those two programs. So that's kind of fun.
I will be really honest. I stayed up way too late and watched way too much of this game. I did not. Yeah, it was not worth my while. It was not a fantastic game, but yeah, it's hey, as an SEC fan, we need our non-conference wins where we can get them this year. So we'll stay up late and cheer for Auburn at 10:30 Eastern. But yeah, no, hey, good win for Hugh Freeze. They're 2-0. 2-0.
Sure. All right, and then one more game to round out the evening. Oklahoma State beat Arizona State 27-15. One of those games that you don't really pay attention to much at the time, but like at the end of the year, like that could affect, especially Oklahoma State, what we think of their season, and Arizona State if they want to go to a bowl game, all of that. So yeah, that's week 2. Anything we missed that you'd like to touch on before we move on?
I think that's it. Yeah, I think it was a solid week overall. Now, I'll be honest, I just saw the week 4 schedule. Apparently we just saved all the good games for week 4. Like, it did feel like some of the week 1, week 2, and week 3 were just, they had some good games, they did, but they didn't have it wasn't the quality, not the depth that we will get here week 4, week 5, week 6. It's kind of we get into the meat of the schedule. So yeah, good games, fascinating games. A lot of storylines.